Thank you.
Is your room here? No, I don't think it is.
He's so good.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I know, yeah.
But,
Lifesaver.
This gift from our friends all around the world, including the bag done by the Women's Empowerment Center in New York. That's Fidel and his team. Thank you, Chandler. Yeah, he's not here. He's outside talking to Troy about some cybersecurity issues. Let me get back to where I need to be. You're right. So I had the privilege, as I think I told y'all, of meeting Laurentia last February in London at a conference, and we enjoyed dinner together, and it was just an honor for me. And I realized right away what a gift she was, what a special leader she is there in the country of Ghana. She's an international program manager, social entrepreneur, and strategic consultant with substantive experience in governance, development, cooperation, transnational and cross-institutional leadership across Europe and West Africa. She currently serves as program manager at the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Foundation in Accra, Ghana, where she leads initiatives strengthening democratic institutions, governance, and political leadership in close cooperation with public institutions, civil society, and international partners in Ghana. And I won't take any more of your time, but she was raised in Germany, has quite a fascinating story. If you get a chance, you should talk with her. But anyway, welcome, Laurentia, and we're so honored to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Henry. I have to admit, I'm a bit nervous since it's my first time speaking in front of leaders like yourself, but I'm excited. And I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And it's just a blessing to get to know so many people of you. And all the interactions I've been having so far, they are very inspiring. And for a young person like myself, just gives me hope for the future. So thank you. So today you're actually going to hear from me on what Ghana's women leaders can actually teach us about fair and compassionate governance. So excellencies, distinguished leaders, colleagues, my family and friends online, I stand on all protocols, and I just want to say that basically how I will be structuring this presentation is that in a couple of 2 days we identified certain challenges that I want to dive into, actually highlight them by through data, and then I want to formulate some hypotheses which then I would like to support with a precise example in Ghana, which are specifically the traditional women leaders, a specific group of women leaders in Ghana. All right. So in many parts of the world, leadership is measured in power and numbers. The question has always been how fast can we decide, how strongly can we actually project authority, and how efficiently can we implement reform. Yet, across continents, we see these challenges in global politics and in leadership. We've already said a couple of times that trust is declining in established institutions. And I would like to support this by specific data from the OECD survey on drivers of trust in public institutions from 2024, which says that 39% of people report high or moderately high trust in their national government, and 44% report low or no trust. Generally, since 2002, 2021, in average, we've seen a decline in trust in national governments in OECD countries. The Edelman Trust Barometer from 2025 actually supports that notion that trust has been declining since 2021. And it even continues to say that 70% of people believe that leaders, including their own governments, mislead people. Now, thirdly, there's a growing gap between the political elite and the people. Leadership is disconnected from lived realities. Governance is increasingly inhuman and technical. A French study from 2023 says that around 87% of French respondents believe political leaders act in their own interests and don't represent the people. Earlier we spoke about the reason, that French people seem to vote less. And lastly, global surveys show that satisfaction with democracy is below 50% in most countries. For example, France again, it's 19%, in the US it's 20%, and in Croatia it's 18%. And so the common concerns of many citizens is lack of political accountability, mis and disinformation, and corruption. So looking at all this and our theme for this conference, I believe that the question really isn't whether we need more fair and compassionate governance. The question rather is, where do you learn it from? What model is already there that maybe we can draw some lessons from? And so today I want to suggest that we should maybe look to a developing country, which is Ghana, and actually learn from Ghana's Queen Mothers what we can learn from for compassionate governance, and that it is possible. And I want to draw these assumptions. The number one, the Queen Mothers actually show us that the best way to govern is through proximity to the people. The representation of women leadership is not a Western ideology. And then also that Asian leadership style, which includes traditional leadership and traditional leadership, is actually something that the West and the modern world can learn a lot from to tackle the challenges we are facing today. Precisely the 4 challenges I mentioned earlier. So let me give you a brief concept of Ghana's governance structure. Ghana practices a presidential constitutional democracy since 1992, and it's marked so far 4 peaceful transitions of power. Am I the one working on the presentation? No? Okay, please go back. Thank you. Also, the pointer isn't working.
Oh.
Is it? Okay.
Can you just tell us? Do you have another? Awesome.
Thank you so much. So, Ghana is in West Africa, has a population of around 35 million people, and it remains a beacon of stable democracy and a model for democracy in all of Africa. We have key democratic institutions like the Parliament, the Supreme Court, the Electoral Commission, and I just want to also use some data from a nationwide survey in Ghana that my office, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, just recently conducted, so that you just have a bit of the numbers and compare it with the numbers that I showed earlier. So the nationwide survey that we conducted in Ghana says that 97% of Ghanaians consider democracy important. 69% say very important, and 28.2% say somewhat important. Nearly 69% are satisfied or very satisfied with how democracy works in Ghana. And 81% feel that their votes truly count. An example is that we just recently had the general elections in Ghana in 2024 in December. And it was a quite tense election. And the now opposition party lost the election. Before the results were even announced, because it was a huge gap actually, the first huge gap that we've ever had. We mainly have like two dominant parties in Ghana. The now opposition leader and presidential candidate got to the camera in front of the media and already congratulated his opponent, the then becoming the winner of the election, for the great results. What it did literally was like, it saved Ghana from instability and from turmoil that could have happened. And it's a great example of leadership, I believe, because it showed us in that moment that the leader was able to put down his own interest for the security of our nation. And so this has really enabled and helped us in Ghana to have an additional transition of power that was held and done peacefully. So alongside the democratic state that we have in Ghana, we also have a traditional authority system, which is led by chiefs, kings, and queens. So in the picture here, you see the now president, the current president of Ghana, his name is Mahama, and the king of Ashanti region, Otumfuo Asante. So you can see the both of them are chatting and having a great conversation. And this traditional authority structure has existed in Ghana for centuries before colonial rule and any modern democracy. Now, the system is formally recognized in our constitution in Article 270 and 277, which sees that Ghana has a national House of Chiefs. And those traditional leaders, they are not involved in partisan politics. They oversee customary law, local disputes, and they also oversee the communal land, which makes up around 80% of all land masses in Ghana. So it tells you how much influence, how much wealth those traditional leaders have.
So did you say is the gentleman in the blue the president?
No, yes, he's the one, yeah, president.
And the other gentleman is
Yes,
the
he's
chief?
the president, Mahama, and he's the king
King.
of
Okay.
the Ashanti Kingdom. I'm gonna give you a bit more context about the Ashanti Kingdom to come. So just to add, like in Ghana, we have a lot of chiefs. He's, however, the most influential one because he oversees the biggest land masses and also the largest ethnic group or community in Ghana, with a lot of millions under him. So, as you can see, we have this duality of powers, which sees that formal political power lies with the elected government, and social and cultural authority often lies with traditional leaders. Okay, you can.
Can we run it forward, Christoph?
So now Ghana's traditional chieftaincy also foresees a duality when it comes to genders. Since ancient times, it has believed that power is best held between both genders, men and women, and should never lie just, with one person. And so we also, alongside the institution of chiefs and kings, we have an institution of queen mothers. And those queen mothers, she's an example, as they are not the wives of the chiefs or the kings, and they are mostly also not their biological mothers. They are rather seen as mothers of the people and mothers of the nation. And so the cultural context from those queen mothers emerged from the Akan people, which is the largest ethnic and linguistic group in Ghana, because they follow a matrilineal system of inheritance, meaning lineage, identity, and succession passes through the mother's line. And this tradition has shaped our governance structure for centuries, placing women at the center of community continuity and leadership. These queen mothers are not just ceremonial figures. They are governing authorities. They are social, cultural, and political actors. They are custodians of the values of the land that we live, walk, and eat from. They are mediators in conflict. Through their diplomacy, they've been able to avoid certain conflicts and war to erupt in Ghana. They are selectors, makers, and advisors of chiefs and kings. So they advise the chiefs. In Ghana, we have that belief that it's called the Aburatitia, meaning the short old lady. And it's a symbol of understanding that wisdom comes with age, as we've heard it before. And so the wisdom of a mother should not be declined or rejected. In addition, so they are the custodians of the royal family lineage and genealogy, and they are the protectors and representatives of women, children, and youth in our community. So the wisdom of a mother is being given down to the daughters of that community, and also the men profit from it. So the Queen Mother's framework actually is so exemplary that it translates to other parts of our community and society in Ghana. A high number of women make up the informal sector in Ghana. Maybe you have seen some pictures where women are on the street and they're having things on their head and they're selling them. And so in the market system, for instance, we have queen mothers who oversee and govern the goods. So we have queen mothers in tomatoes, queen mothers in yam, and they actually decide and regulate the prices and the standards and decide who can sell where and how. So they're actually the ones making sure that the market runs well. And so in Ghana and Accra, we have Makula Market, which is one of the biggest markets in Horn of West Africa. It's actually like a small town. And in addition, the system of seeing the wisdom and guidance of an elderly woman as very relevant is also translated in the political system. So in politics, there's this framework that no committee, no board of advisors is allowed to, to be established without having at least one respected matriarch or queen mother on board. So any decision that is being done without at least one queen mother or respected matriarch cannot be passed. And that is because the presence of the queen mothers, they actually ensure legitimacy, guidance, and public trust. We know that queen mothers govern close enough to feel the consequences of the decisions. And that proximity shapes everything. It strengthens the integrity of the process itself. It shapes the moral and social environment in which democracy operates. So in other words, tradition does not replace democracy, it actually strengthens it. Now, I don't want to withhold the challenges from you because, of course, there are challenges in there. And the challenges actually began from colonial rule.
Can I ask you one question before you go to that? So are you saying that, like in Parliament, and I know there are a lot of women in Parliament, but those committees, is there a queen mother on those committees in Parliament? But she's not an elected official?
No, she isn't. She's not. She's really just there to guide the process and give wisdom, like, okay, you know what, I know we want to, pass this regulation, for instance, but in the past, we had a similar issue, and this and this and this happened. So my suggestion is, let's look at this. Let's take this into consideration. Maybe I know this certain person who works there and there, who was involved in this form of regulation. Let's take him on board and see what he has to say. So that's an example. So going back to the challenges, in colonial time, before colonial time, we had this dual system where women were part of the public sphere. Through the Victorian values, however, they were pushed, into the private sphere and making leadership and other, public things more of a men's job. And so out of that, gender equality actually does persist with the Queen Mothers. First of all, they have lack of access to financial resources. Secondly, I mentioned that the constitutions foresees a National House of Chiefs, but we don't have a National House of Queen Mothers. And the National House of Chiefs mostly doesn't have enough representation of the Queen Mothers on board. And that even though the Queen Mothers mediate between democracy and traditional system. So in my work with Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, we precisely work in that. We promote democracy. So Konrad Adenauer Stiftung is a German political foundation named after the first chancellor after the Second World War. And we promote democracy, good governance, political education, making sure that democracy as a value is upheld. We've been in Ghana for 60 years, working with political decision makers, with international actors, with the local civil societies, with universities doing research, holding workshops and so on. And so in our work there, we also work closely together with Paramount Queen Mothers, who are the highest ranking female traditional leaders within a traditional area next to the Paramount Chiefs. So I want to give you an example of one of our workshops that we held before the general election 2024. The Queen Mothers themselves identified that mis and disinformation is a huge issue and might be a huge risk for the election, the upcoming election. So what we did was to help the Queen Mothers, to equip them with the tools to sensitize the local community about the threat of mis and disinformation, helping them to actually facilitate truthfully and empirically based information about the election, the candidates of the election. And so what it did was that it actually strengthened democracy and it built bridges. So the Queen Mothers can be seen as builders of bridges between democracy and the traditional system. So they carry legitimacy, making sure that whatever is being decided in the democratic process actually gets translated onto the local level. And whatever happens in the local level, they actually carry legitimacy into the democratic process. And so through our work, we've learned something very essential. In many Ghanaian communities, women, especially Queen Mothers and respected matriarchs, are the anchors of social cohesion. They are the voices that carry trust, and their guidance shape community consensus, which means that meaningful engagement with society actually starts with them. And when their leadership is recognized and included, democratic processes become stronger and more legitimate. Next slide. I want to give you an example of a female leader in history, and her name is Ya Santua. She's a famous Queen Mother in the Ashanti region in Jusso. So you see that the Ashanti region now is, smaller. But she was the Queen Mother of the whole Ashanti Kingdom, which is much bigger than what is seen here. Because being a chief or a king is not just over the land, it's actually over the people. So if I should maybe live in the north, and he would still be my king, or she would still be my queen. And so Ya Santua, she led the famous resistance war in 1900. So while in many European countries, women were fighting to vote, in Ghana, women were actually going to war and leading war. So in 1900, there was a big issue that the colonial British rulers demanded the golden stool. And so the golden stool is a symbol in Ghana of believing that the soul of the nation, is represented by the stool. So even the Ashanti king doesn't sit on the stool. It's just implied 3 times in ceremonies that he's being enthroned on the stool, but nobody gets to sit on that stool. And so you can imagine the outrage it was for the people in the kingdom to hear that the British colonial rulers wanted to have the students sit on it, right? Mad thing. And so the chiefs and the elders sat at the city gate, and then they were discussing actually, thinking of giving in to the British rulers and giving them the golden stool. And Yasantua stood up in that moment and was like, you guys are cowards. Why would you exchange our nation, our soul, right, with what the British rulers want? And she famously said, if you men don't get up and fight for our nation, you will have to exchange your loins for underwear. And unfortunately, the men resisted, and Yasantua got up and led the fight against the British colonial rulers. So unfortunately, they lost the war in that sense that the region was annexed by British colonial rulers. Yasantua was exiled. However, the British colonial rulers never got to find the golden spoon. Until today, only selected members of the royal family know where the golden stool is. And just for specific ceremonial moments, they take out the golden spoon. So that's a big achievement. And the reason why they actually lost their life. And so Yasantua demonstrated that African women have long exercised authority at the highest level. She went on and led the resistance to fight for the people, showing us that leadership in that moment required responsibility and not cowardness. Next one, please. Okay, so the woman next to her is her direct descendant from the Asuna tribe, wearing the same warrior attire during a rolling ceremony. And so the colors represent, you don't mind that I'm getting up. So the colors represent red for shedding your blood, resistance, green for the land that they oversee and the the agriculture and the fertility, and orange and yellow for the resources and the gold that we have. You see the tiger field, showing boldness and so on. Next slide. And so, taking all of this into consideration, I want to leave us with 3 lessons that we can actually learn from those women leaders. Number 1, lead with proximity. The queen mothers live among the community, and that's so that they can actually get to feel, the consequences of the decisions. They share the lived realities with the people they actually govern. And so for leadership in our modern world today, it means that we ought to be close to the people we're actually leading. Maybe not necessarily physically, but we ought to have an understanding of what shapes them, of what gets to them, of what's important to them. So we actually understand the decisions that we are making is affecting real people, not just numbers. Secondly, lead with moral authority. The Queen Mother shows us that institutional authority can be assigned, but moral authority needs to be earned. And that is through character, through perseverance, through all the values that we spoke about earlier. And then lastly, tradition can be a leadership asset. I know that in many parts of the world, tradition has become a hindrance and a limitation for specific groups. However, I believe that the Queen Mothers also show us that tradition can be something positive. When people actually know where they are from and what shapes them and what shapes the nation, and they know their identity and their memories, it actually gives them power. It makes them realize that this is where I'm from and I'm not alone. And so somehow in our globalized world, nations wanting to, stay unique and get back to their roots and come together and be reunified with identity is a good thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be something bad. And so, all these things, I did not just learn it with my working class. I learned it at home. So, the picture of the descendant of Yasantua that you saw, she's my mom. And she is the Queen Mother, Nana Jua Kwafua Apija I. I know you're watching. Honoring you. And she's the Queen Mother in Nkwantam. And so I stand here today not just as a scholar of tradition, but I believe as a living bridge between centuries of African womanhood and the leadership governance systems that we want to build today and that we are building today. Thank you. And so everything that I've been speaking about, leading with proximity, leading with moral authority, leading with integrity, knowing that tradition is an asset, that leadership is responsibility. It's not just theory. It's actually something that I was raised with. To understand that leadership is responsibility and that fair and compassionate governance is actually something that already exists. Thank you so much.
Since you're online and so many fans are actually streaming right now watching Laurentia, I want to present you our gifts from all over the world, including from Ethiopia, Thailand, Turkey, and many other countries, just as a small way to say thank you. But, I was just telling the Prime Minister when I saw the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung banner up there at the ladies' meeting, I said, soon we're going to see that with the GILPP banner together, okay, as we do something together in God. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Please. I'm wondering, you didn't say it, but you probably know where the golden stool is. If I could have Sharoon and Troy and Joe come up, please. We need to give you your gifts. We forgot to. Ray, can you help me? Ambassador Guyana, can you help me? All right, you take Joe's. Which one do you have, Trey? Okay, Sharoon. And I've got yours. Okay. So, guys, your presentations were just amazing. And Joe, I can tell you, we've already run them through the security scanners downstairs. Now, no, they're not going to blow up on you. Troy, we've done whatever we can to check yours through cybersecurity protocols. So anyway, thanks. Wow, what a day. Just honored to have all of you speakers sharing with us. So one adjustment on the schedule is that of David Beasley. And Sarah came up to me at the end of the last session and said, I have an urgent message for you. He actually was supposed to be speaking in the United States Senate for some senators this morning, and he wrote me and he said, I have lost my voice. So sadly, we were going to interview him live, like we did in Hawaii in January. It's so much more compelling than if it's taped. But anyway, he sends his regards. He loves the job. Of course, Prime Minister Hager is a good friend of his, as is Prince Nicholas, and many of you in this room. not only the Geneva Institute, but also Global Hope. And so he sends his regrets. One thing I want to tell you is Time Magazine recently wrote an article based on his position on sustainability. And that's a big thing that we've been talking about these last 2+ days. And if you want that, just let Sarah or Marissa know and we can send it to you. But it's a great article. The bottom line is, he says, out of all the things in the world to address poverty and famine and those sorts of issues, the only answer is exactly what we're trying to do through global leadership and also work on the ground, which is sustainability, reproducibility, helping people flourish where they live, okay? So that's in Time Magazine. It's a great piece, and I encourage you to ask Marissa and Sarah. We send it to you today or by tomorrow at the latest, but anyway, I wanted to let you know about that. So he's a great friend, and he's really sorry that he's missed this opportunity to intersect with us, because we were going to have you ask him some questions and so forth. After he served as governor of South Carolina, and I was his lawyer when he was the governor of South Carolina, he went on to serve as the executive director of the World Food Program based in Rome, which has 18,000 employees, and quite an organization. One thing that Celia and I learned about the World Food Program when we went on a tour there is, not only do they give out food, Charlie, but they also help build farms and help people try to be self-sustainable. And so a lot of great things that the World Food Program does, in addition to giving food to people who need it. So what we're going to do is shift the program a little bit. You can see in your agenda that in a few minutes we're going to hear from some Global Hope personnel around the world. I think it'll be an encouragement to you, some things that are going on the ground. But before we do that, what I want to do is ask the speakers from today, Ann, if she's still here, Laurentia, Troy, Shannon, and Joe, to come up here. And what we're going to do is just give them, and Prime Minister Hager, and give you an opportunity to ask them some questions. We'll go till about 2:30, okay? And then we'll have the Global Hope panel start. We'll run till probably about 3:15 or 3:30. Marissa and Sarah, we may have the coffee break 15 minutes early, and then proceed on with the day. So if you all would come on up and have a seat, and I know Ambassador Piana's probably, I think you told me you had to leave. Anyway, and can we give him a round of applause for all the, we actually have 89 or 90 people now signed up for the UN. And so again, we've had several signed up today. If you haven't signed up, let us know. Remember to bring your passport. And we're going to give you all later today instructions on both how to get to the pregnant gate there at the UN, as well as how to get to the Reformation Wall in the morning for those of y'all who are going on the Reformation tour, okay? So we'll have that up on a slide before we leave this afternoon. Okay, Jake? That's it. That falls in your court. Directions from Sarah and Marissa on how to get to the UN tomorrow, and then a separate slide on how to get to the Reformation Wall. If we could do that, that would be a great service. Thank you, Sarah. I knew y'all were always one step ahead.
That's how Sarah lives. One step ahead of you.
He was just saying, president of Gioia University, who rents office space from us, is going to be here this afternoon. He wants to introduce him to us, so that'll be a great honor. It's a university located in Malta. So do we have everybody here, all the panelists? Okay, Joe, are you here? Yeah, there you are. Okay, why don't we do this? Let's open the floor for questions to any of these panelists, and we'll go about 20 minutes. Jeroen, come on up. Yeah, we got to have you up here to be sure we're succeeding. Okay? And we might need to pull a chair. Somebody can help him get one of these chairs from the, if it's not hooked to, we got it? Okay, good. All right, we're ready. Yeah, I think we're good. There we go. Yes, Adrian.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, my question is concerning cybersecurity. If you compare visual face recognition versus passwords, which one is more accurate?
That's a great question. I know that we are going to something what's called passwordless, where you sit down in front of your computer and it knows that it's you instead of having to type in a password. They're using biometrics, not just facial recognition, but also some other indicators, fingerprint. And so Windows Hello, as an example, is good, already using that technology. In big or large enterprises, I know that they're trying to make it so that users have less friction. And by less friction, I mean not having to put in a password. But when we talk about AI, and we were talking at the lunch break about some of the concerns that Anthropic had about facial recognition on the battlefield and facial recognition and other nefarious uses of our privacy and data. Once your face is mathematically calculated, in other words, a fingerprint of your face is made by the computer, it is stored in a database, which is a very personal piece of information, just like your fingerprint. And so if that data is compromised by the wrong actor, they could use it to potentially use robotics to locate you. It could be drones, it could be robot dog from Boston Dynamics, or any of the other, not science fiction things that we have to deal with today. And so it's more of a privacy concern than cybersecurity, because it's the same outcome. Data is data. If it's lost forever. But then it's that privacy of, now is my, 23andMe is a great example. People send in their DNA to be tested, and then this company is bought by another company, so now your data is being used and leveraged by somebody you don't know and didn't sign an agreement with. So there are privacy concerns for facial recognition and biometrics for sure. I don't have an answer for which one is better, other than it's a topic for discussion amongst privacy leaders.
Thank you very much.
I'll add to that as well. We talked a little bit about lunch. I would say a combination of the both is best, but what we were talking about lunch is that our oldest daughter is kind of my doppelganger. She looks very much like me. And she is able to trick the biometrics on my iPhone with her face because she looks very similar to me. So she is able to unlock my iPhone with her face.
So my team at Google actually deployed passwordless for all the users. So if you're using password assignment Google, it's my team that did it. And I think the question you should ask yourself is, what are you protecting yourself from? If a company comes to me and says, oh, I have so many problems with facial recognition, but all they're going to use is just the passwords and nothing more, then my point would be like, get to something first and then go to the last mile. So I think an account with just a password in 2025, 2026, where it's just irresponsible, and you should really not have it. You should have something extra. And if that extra is your face, absolutely do it. And I can say that we are very good in storing that security.
Wow.
You're not selling it.
Next question.
Quick question. I have a question. I'm over here. I have a question for Mrs. Wilkinson concerning cyber security. You had mentioned that there are frequent thefts by cyber criminals, and that they will often take those amounts of theft and reinvest so that they can do more theft or bigger theft. Do you have any statistics or figures on what is an average size theft and what is perhaps in the last year or two the largest cyber theft?
Actually, Troy helped me answer this question because he knows off the top of his head. There's a 30.5.
So the average breach is
3.5 million. Sorry.
3.5 million is average loss for cybercrime. That's average. Large enterprises pay upwards of 50 million. We've seen with Bitcoin paid, all the way down to a couple 100,000. But cybercrime is now the third largest GDP behind the United States and China, and so it is a business. And they're running like a business, as Shannon mentioned, and they continue to invest. We saw a platform from a Russian threat actor that had a platform, a user interface that you go on. There was a chat section, so you could chat with them, that you could negotiate the payment. You could see samples of the things that they had encrypted to ensure that you would get your files back. So they treat it just like a software development company. And now what they've done is they've chopped up each step of the attack chain into different actors. So the initial entry, or the reconnaissance, is one actor. They sell that to another group which leverages the malware attack and the targeting. And then they leverage that to the exfiltration team that actually goes in and gets the data and encrypts it. And they pass that on to the next team, which is the negotiation and financial team to get the money. So they've got experts in each one of these segments.
It's almost like they're treating it like a legitimate business.
No, it is. It's the modern digital mafia, basically, it's the modern criminal enterprise. It's now all digital, it's global, and they do run it like a business. They reinvest their ill-gotten gains in profiting even more from cybercrime.
And they even include customer service, which is the most weird thing when a company tells me I had to do the payment and I had to contact the criminals help desk, and they were actually super friendly and helping me to pay them so they could unencrypt my data. And by the way, the amount you just mentioned is just the beginning. We saw the sort of grocery store chain in the UK that was not able to give food out in big parts of the UK. We had, of course, some car manufacturers that were completely stopped for some time, so damages can go really, really high.
Sure.
So Google used to be, and Amazon and Microsoft used to be some hackers in their mother's basement or in a garage. Now they're multi-billion, hundreds of billions of dollar companies. Hackers used to be, we have this idea that hackers are a couple of guys in their garage or basement, and they're also multiple trillions of dollars of organizations, hundreds of billions of dollars now, and they're scaling fraud. It's fraud on a scale, just like a business scales. They're putting our NDAs and our business principles to work to scale fraud into a massive, massive scale. One of the biggest beneficiaries of that we know of in the news right now is Iran. Iran has massive crypto and cybercrime fraud. Just last year alone, we took over $11 billion from Iran's terror network in cryptocurrency scams. So they use, North Korea and Iran are using cryptocurrency scams on a massive scale, like you said, with really good customer service. So if they ask you to leave a Google review,
Said the help desk was friendly. That's amazing. Rhonda, you had a question.
Yes, I have two questions. Number one, it's about your digital footprint, like on Facebook and social media and so on. I've not believed in putting up things out there, but if you ask for those things to be deleted and they're taken down, is it possible for there to be an unseen digital print in which other people can get it?
Yes.
That's the first question. And then the second one is, well, we're in Nigeria right now, we're into smart homes. So we have Alexa doing all of that. We have our smart TVs and so on. And we're into a lot of voice activation of things. So how secure is that? Is it, out there we have this notion that your smart TV is recording your voice, while you're going on in the house and so on. I don't know how true that is. And how secure are those things?
Good questions, and I'm gonna start with the first one. Anything you put online, you should assume that it's gonna be there forever. And the reason for that is that there are companies, and especially the Wayback Machine, that make a copy of the internet every so often. That way we can look back historically. You could actually go to the Wayback Machine as an actual website, and you can see Google back in '97. You can see whatever your favorite website is as it was in 1998 or 2000, and so on. So there's a copy of all of the things that are out there. So if it's publicly available, you can assume that it's probably going to stay publicly available. I'll tell somebody it's great. I don't use Facebook too much except for my family and friends, and I keep it very locked down so only they can see what I post for good reason. But that I would say, if you do the takedown, California and the United States has a really good privacy policy where if you ask for your data to be deleted, it will be, and that's where Facebook lives, that's where Google lives, and so you have a good chance of having it taken off for now. But we assume somebody may have had access to it in the past, or it might still live out there. contact us if you'd like to find out how to find those things later. We can do that. The second one was the smart homes. Absolutely, Alexa and all those tools are just as susceptible to cyber incidents as anything. And in fact, sometimes they're harder to keep up to date because you need to update software every so often. Your Alexa or your other tools may not be up to date with the current security software they need. And so it's just another entry point for hackers. We have seen, Shannon did a whole post on baby monitors and crib cameras that were hacked for bad folks who are getting involved in the crib and scaring the children. So, you know, use it, again, technology is a sword, use it very wisely.
I would say one of the issues with, internet-connected devices in your homes is that these manufacturers are usually asking you to be a cybersecurity expert. They're asking you to know how to secure it, how to change the admin passwords. And most of us, unless you're in cybersecurity, don't know how to do that. So it is introducing a risk and a potential vulnerability into your homes for having them. So as Troy mentioned, I've done articles in the news and stuff like that on this topic, but I would say if you want what happens in your bedroom to stay private between you and your spouse or whatever, then I would say don't put internet-connected devices in your bedroom.
Baby cribs or anything?
Baby cribs, yeah. I have a question for the Prime Minister, but first, you've got a question.
Okay, so this is Larissa. There was a study that was presented to the Nigerian Institute of Directors, I think 4 months ago, and they asked me to come and be a discussant. Somebody did a PhD that compared Ghanaian companies, corporate institutions, public and so on with Nigeria. And what she found was that the level of maturity when it comes to corporate governance was way better in Ghana than Nigeria. Do you think this Queen Mother's scenario had to handle that? Then to Troy, very quickly, about AI, technology is meant to eventually become available to everyone and cheaper and more accessible. Is AI heading towards a place where poor people in Africa who have limited internet, for example, whose phones are not as smart as iPhones and all that, can use AI? Thank you.
All right, we'll go to Laurentia first and then Troy.
Thank you so much for this question. So it will be difficult to give, direct causality or plausibility on this question. However, one could also ask the question, whether the Queen Mothers have been very influential in making democracy stable, in Ghana so far. And so I would definitely say that they've had a great influence in that, and also how business structures just work. As I said earlier, that the informal sector in Ghana is mainly led by women. And so I think there's research out there that actually shows that women are better with money when they have it than men, but I would have to go back and actually look for the data. I remember I once read something like that. And so I do believe that, it's embedded in the duality of genders, and so they do help each other, and it has, been having like a great impact. So I wouldn't say no, but I wouldn't also say definitely yes, that's the main cause. But I'd say that it is an influential factor.
I have two questions about the digital smartphones.
Hold on, just 1 second. We got a follow-up for Troy. Then I have a question for the Prime Minister, then we'll come to yours.
Okay.
And thank you for that question about Africa, because I truly believe that the folks sitting in this room and the Leadership Institute are paramount to making that happen. I don't think it's going to happen naturally. We have to be intentional about the use of AI. It's not just going to trickle down to those villages naturally. We need to make sure that we as leaders are pushing for those type of sustainability projects, humanitarian projects. Elon Musk has the Starlink initiative trying to bring internet to every corner of the globe. And I really believe in that initiative. And if we can bring internet to these villages, we can then use AI to help some of the management and sustainability projects in those villages to help these folks with education and with so many other opportunities. So I'm hopeful, but if we don't, as leaders, intentionally push those initiatives, we will be left behind, because it'll flow towards profit, it'll flow towards defense, and we can't let that happen.
This is why we want everybody on this dais as a part of the Geneva Institute team, okay? They don't know that yet, but they're going to be giving at least half their time to us, okay? I have a question for the Prime Minister. So you have a team, you have a coalition, as you were speaking about this morning, but there's disagreement. But as the leader, you have to keep moving forward. Whether you call it building consensus or whatever. What's been your experience in that? How do you manage the team moving forward and bringing people to a consensus?
Well, when you have a team and you are the leader, and if you have the authority that you can at the end of the day decide, it's easy. The problem is when all of the partners are equally important, they have the equal authority, and you need to get agreement of all of them. That's the problem. So what do? Well, first of all, when you start a negotiation of this kind of group, you need to set certain principles and explain them the situation, what they're gonna decide. Also, and you as a moderator, you need to know where you wanna get them and how to gonna get them. So you need to have a strategy. If you go unprepared, the outcome is not in your hands. It's in the hands of the best prepared partner who is gonna be around the table. So you have to have your own strategy. And therefore, in the strategy is that you show the picture and you show the urgency. Urgency always helps to get people into a certain corner. And then also, you need to be a great communicator and explain why that particular decision where other partner is trying to lead it is not a good idea. Also, the good strategies are that if you can get to a decision, then you do breaks to loosen up the emotions. You go negotiate individually and different kind of techniques. So you really have to be well prepared and also like emotionally calm, and because there are techniques how to make you emotionally weak. So you can lose it up and then they can use your emotional indisposition against you. So it's really a very serious, I would say, discipline to exercise consensus, and it's good training. But yeah, my recommendation would be great preparation, study your partners, know what they're sensitive on, prepare the whole picture, show the end state, why you want to get them there, and then use all kinds of techniques to get it there. Yeah.
That's great. And listening is one thing I heard from you too. And there's a great book out there by a psychologist named Mark Goulston called Just Listen. If you haven't gotten that book, you should get it, because all leaders should be good listeners. And I know from personal experience that Prime Minister Hager is, and that's why he's so successful.
And sometimes what they do, and you should count that as well, that certain battles you want to lose, because then the next battle you can say, well, I already gave up, so now it's your turn, and all kinds of techniques. There's really a lot of it.
Love that strategy. All right, let's do one more question, and then of course these folks will be here, and I know some have to leave, but I hope they've resourced you and stay in contact and so forth. But one more question from over here, I think, and then we'll wrap up this session.
Okay, I have a couple of questions regarding the use of our smartphones. No one now is not using smartphones. So the first thing is, what is the most secure way of calling? Because that most of the calls can be actually bugged, or people can hear it some way or another. So some claim that FaceTime is very secure. Others say no, you better use other applications like Telegram or Signal. It's more encrypted. So which one is the most secure way that you can make sure that your phone calls are not heard from someone else? The second thing, how far our phones are actually listening to us. It happens with all of us that we are talking about something, even when our phones are off, and when we turn it, you find a commercial about something we were talking about. So is it true that the phones can actually hear us even when we have our phones turned off?
I'll take the second one for sure. I used to work for an advertising agency called IPG, Interpublic Group, Fortune 300. They're sold to another firm. They're no longer in business. But part of the ad tech community is literally working with these companies like Facebook, as an example. To if you look at the user's agreement when you sign up, you scroll really quickly, you click OK, accept. Inside that agreement is you're giving permission for them to listen, and absolutely your microphone is always on. These programs are listening. If you pick your phone up and say African Safari, you may start getting ads in your Facebook for African Safari. It goes across all platforms. It's not just Facebook. It's LinkedIn, Google, Microsoft, I mean, they share information, there's cookies and tracking and sessions and so on. So we also used to own a company that's in the consumer data space, 480 different identifiers on every American. And so you think about, I'm so old, I like guitars, I like this, I like cigars and things like that. They have a profile for me, and I'll start getting mailers at my house. I'll start getting advertising online. All of those things are connected. They're not disparate. They're not separate. So if your phone is listening or anything you do on your browser, if you go to a website or anything like that, it's all tracked together. They're making a profile for who you are, your age, your demographics, your likes and dislikes, and they're serving you advertising content. Now, Apple has gone through some links. You know that do not allow ASMOC to track. They are making strides, but you know we are literally walking around, giving information to technology that is then used to target us. And so the saying is, if you're not paying for the application, then you are the product. And so on the first question, I can only answer it in the way that I have knowledge, and that is all my friends in the Department of Defense and other secure environments like you see. That helps.
I hope you'll be able to sleep this evening. No, it happened.
Don't turn off your phone, it's not gonna help. I even heard that it can read your mind. Some people say we're thinking about something, we didn't talk about it, and you found a commercial.
No, it's amazing. In our home, we'll talk about traveling, and the next morning I get a commercial about flying to Frankfurt. So anyway. Listen, thanks to the panelists again. It's just been great. So we're going to shift now a little bit. Thank you all. We're going to shift now to Global Hope, and let me just give one word of explanation, and then Prime Minister Hager, you can stay here because I'd like you to interject some questions too of our staff, and Trey and I will be doing some interviewing. But for those of you who are on the Global Hope field staff, if y'all will come on up, and if we need, some more chairs, we'll get some more chairs. But Johanna, Fidel, spouses, Jeff, Beth, y'all come on up. So just by way of explanation, the Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy is a part of the Global Hope Network International family. And the Global Hope Network International family has been existing for 25 years, basically working among those who we call the less fortunate in 30 countries around the world, from West Africa through East Africa, the Middle East, and into South and Southeast Asia. So we wanted to feature our friends, come on up, Sade, our friends and all, y'all come on and have a seat here. Come on, Johanna. Yeah, come on up. We wanted to hear from some of the people who are working on the ground. Bashak, please, come on up. Martins. And so we just celebrated the 25th anniversary of Global Hope Network International. The Geneva Institute was born, that is a great milestone. The Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy was born out of Global Hope to do what we have been doing these last 2+ days. Work with global leaders and interface with global leaders and talk to them about enacting policies, that will help benefit the less fortunate. So that's the intersection between these two groups. So we thought it would be instructive and honestly encouraging for you to hear. Just one example, and then Trey and I will do some interviewing. You don't have to put things out if you can. There we go, we got it, okay. Just one example of how this works as a practical matter. From 2 years ago, we had the reception that we had on Monday night, all right? The ambassador from the country of Sierra Leone attended the reception. You remember this, Sade, because I've still got a great picture of you and him. Sade from Nigeria, I have a picture of her with the ambassador. We said, Mr. Ambassador, you need to go see the work that we're doing in Sierra Leone. Subsequently, Johanna, he went, he saw the work, he liked the project. It was a borehole, which is what you do before you're digging a well. He actually funded the project, So we were able to take the funds that had been dedicated for that project and move them to another project. All right? And so what we've learned is that as you get to know decision makers, ambassadors, political leaders, mayors, members of parliament, and others, then they can be influenced when they see that their people are being helped. Does that make sense? And so it's a great intersection between working with the less fortunate, or we call them sometimes the hidden and hurting, all right, and working at the top levels of government. And that's exactly what I was mentioning a few minutes ago with David Beasley. He's really locked into this point that if you can mobilize the people at the higher levels of society, funding and decision making and laws, then what happens is it trickles down to the less fortunate. Okay? And so that's why I'm a part of both organizations. I serve as the CEO of Global Hope, and I serve as the president of the Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy, because they're working in tandem. So I hope that helps you understand the connection between the two organizations and really why we're here this week. So I'm privileged to introduce all of these folks to you all. And Trey, why don't you take people from Fidel down that way and introduce them just quickly, where they live and so forth, and then once you do that, I'll introduce this side, and then we'll pose as many questions as we can, and we want you all to ask questions as well.
Okay, so my name is Trey Kaysen. I had the privilege of working with GHNI for the last 7 years. I lived in Thailand and worked on the Southeast Asia team. This is Joshua Inman.
Oh, wait a minute now. Now you got to tell them the biggest news of your family.
Okay, yeah, so we just had a baby.
Sorry, thought I could use my outdoor voice. Yeah, so we just had a baby. She's named Juniper. She's 6 months old, and yeah, she's a cutie. We love her.
Just moved to the UK for your
Moved
studies.
to the UK, yes,
Okay.
for studies. So yeah, so Trey Kaysen, and this is Joshua Inman, the regional field leader for Southeast Asia. He's also serves a number of different roles in the organization, and definitely an asset, and someone I would encourage you to speak with.
And lives in Thailand.
Lives in Chiang Mai, Thailand as well. This is Dr. or soon to one day, Dr. Sade Atanda. Works alongside Dr. Martin Zatanda and leads the work in West Africa. Some of the busiest people you've ever met. If you think that you're doing some excellent work, I recommend that you don't talk to them, because they're doing 10 times that amount of work. So it's really incredible. And this is our friend Fidel. Fidel is the leader in Ethiopia, a dear friend, one of the warmest, most beloved people in their community that I've ever met. And so big encouragement.
Excellent, thank you. And I told Jill earlier, Fidel is doing great work, as is Sade and all of these folks among women, especially in Addis Ababa, training women and helping them, moving that group out and accepting another group, and he'll tell you about that in a minute. Also, our friend Varda, down on the end, lives in Armenia. We are working very closely with him, and he also is working with women and children, especially in his village. And we're going to hopefully send a trauma counseling team to work with Varden and his colleagues later this year. So if that's something that would be of interest to you, or if you know any counselors or therapists, please let Celia or me know, because we're putting that team together right now, working with Varden. So quickly, introductions, and then we'll get to some questions. To my left is Johanna Adley, again, Dr. Johanna, has a PhD in community development and leads the work for Global Hope in Egypt. He has a 10-member team, and most of the folks here, all of their teams are indigenous, okay? And so that's a real advantage in terms of cost, proximity, language, those types of things. I've been to Egypt many times, and he's doing extraordinary work. He'll tell you more in just a minute. Now, I don't know why Dr. Martins isn't sitting by his wife, but in any event, there's no problem. I just want to be sure, because when Sade says something, I have to respond. Dr. Martins Atanda, great leader. I was just on a call with him. He was training over 100 people from 5 different countries just a couple of weeks ago. And he got me on the phone and I spoke to them and encouraged them, working among the less fortunate. Last August, Celia and I were there with a trauma counseling team working with him in Senegal. He had 116 people, 105 people, I think, maybe from 16 different countries there in Senegal. Tremendous leader. Thank you. Bashar Shelik lives in Izmir, Turkey, and leads our work in Turkey. And just doing a great job, especially intersecting with politicians, government leaders, and people in the business sector. And Jeff, she just told me this morning, Jeff and Beth, I'll introduce in a minute, but she just told me this morning that the mayor, who many of you know, who was here 2 years ago, really wants us to come and do a Geneva Institute conference in Izmir. So we're excited about that. And then last but not least, Beth and Jeff Lotza. They also live in Izmir, Turkey. Jeff leads, does a lot of our strategic coordination of what Global Hope is doing across 30 countries. And just tremendous work, not only across those many countries, but also in Turkey. So this is the Global Hope team. Dr. Charlie Demento is also on our team. Although he lives in the States, he lived for a long time here in Geneva and is focused on human trafficking, and we're going to hear from him after the break. And I think that'll be a real encouragement too. So let's ask just a couple of questions. Sade, let me start with you, and then Trey, maybe you can follow up with Fidel and the others on the panel. We won't have time for long questions and long answers because we want to hear as many as we can. But Sade, just one example of what you all are doing in one of your countries in working among women. Would you just explain, give an example, a story about that, if you would?
Yeah, like you heard from Laurentia, women are special. They are strong, they are resilient. And in Borno State and in the northeast of Nigeria, we have several women who have undergone the TCD training. They are internally displaced persons because of the insurgency that had happened there since 2009, and we're still counting. So some of these women have taken the TCD training and have gone back to those communities. We have, I don't want to mention names, some of them for security reasons. We have some in Gombe State, we have in Borno State. These women go back to the villages, the grassroots. We equip them with sewing machines. We ask them to train women. And these women who are trying to rebuild their lives from nothing. Some of those women told us some years back that you can imagine a community where all the men have been killed and it's the women that dig the graves to bury people. This is where these women are coming from. And these TCD champions have gone into their villages. They are hard to reach people, pick them up and have started helping them to rebuild their lives by giving them skills, by teaching literacy, adult literacy. And these women are just beginning to flourish again. And we believe that they will thrive despite all they have been through. So with skills acquisition, with education, these women are coming back to life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's, she used the acronym TCD, and just so you understand that, that's a principle called Transformational Community Development, which is what I was saying relates back to what David Beasley was saying, and that is we want to see people flourish where they live. So as she was mentioning, clean, accessible water, well-being, both physical and emotional, good education, nutritional food, and income generation, helping people. And I know Fidel, you do it. Let me just, I'll transition to Fidel because this goes right to him, but and also to Jeff and Beth and others, helping people acquire a skill. Can you just tell them what you're doing there in the Women's Empowerment Center in Addis Ababa? And you're gonna have to speak closely because you have a soft voice.
Yeah, in Addis we have a women's empowerment center where we train urban prostitutes and other displaced people and single mothers. And in our center we have vocational training in hairdressing and sewing. These are the two vocational training, but in addition to that we have also psychosocial support with them. And we have an e-library where we train their children in basic computer skills, science, and with our volunteers also we give them after school tutor. So we have a four months training for one cohort, and when one group finishes, the other comes. And according to our survey that we did recently, 60% of those women, either they have their own business now, or they are hired by local hairdressing in addition to that, we have also started producing bags because recently the Ethiopian government banned plastic bags from the city, and it was an opportunity for us to produce bags for clothes, and now the Women's Empowerment Center by itself is generating income and sustaining itself. And there are three from our three previous cohorts, three group of women have started their own business of hairdressing and sewing. We also provide food for the children who come, and we have a daycare, a temporary daycare, because one of the challenge for a single mother is to put her child somewhere to go to train herself. So it was important that we provide daycare service while she's taking her vocational training. I give credit to my beloved wife for all the vision. I'm just the speaker. She's the visionary of all what we are doing. She's the one who's teaching the children, and sometimes even she provides free food from her own expenses. And I would like to say thank you very much for what you are doing.
I would have to say, all of these folks have extraordinary spouses. The last time we were in Addis, we were privileged to have dinner with Fidel and Alem, and it's just wonderful. If we have time, I want to come back and talk about urban gardens, but we'll talk about that later because that was a direct outgrowth of the Geneva Institute Conference 2 years ago. Let me shift to Johanna, because you also have, you work in Cairo, you work in the middle, what I call the middle of Egypt, and also South Egypt in Amman, but particularly one story about income generation there in Amman. Can you share that?
Yes. We help the women in the poor communities to start a business, small business, and we can see how transformation happen in this family because it's a very small project, but this project bring a hope for the whole family. Like many widows and they haven't anything in their houses, start like sewing machine project or grocery in their house, or she sells some vegetables in the front of her house, and how we can see this small project affect whole family, and this lady became stable, didn't go and ask money from people, but help her family. So we have a lot of successful stories how the poor ladies start this project and bring secure to their family for her children. And we started that with the poor ladies in Aswan and in Minya. And this area is far from the capital and people suffering because the economy in Egypt is very weak last years, so people suffering from income. So we helped this lady to start this project, and we follow up these projects. We didn't give money and go back, say bye-bye. No, we follow up weekly and monthly, and also we give loan. We didn't give a gift, because when we start to give a gift, people take this money for food and for something else, not doing a project. But when we said loan, that you're supposed to work to send the money back after 1 year or 1.5 years as a situation of their family. So yes, we saw many successful stories from the poor families in Egypt.
And tell them, if you would, before we move to Martin's, you work among a lot of refugee women.
Yes.
Give them the numbers on Sudanese refugee women who have come with children, say over the last year or two.
Yes. If you don't know that Egypt have more than 8 million refugees came from different countries like Yemen, Palestine, Syrian, Sudanese, but the majority from Sudanese. We have more than 3 million Sudanese refugees live in Egypt, especially in Cairo, the capital, and Aswan in the border with Sudan. So we are working at least with 200 or 300 children and mothers in Sudanese refugees, and we start relief in the beginning, because as you know, they haven't anything. They came from the war, the situation very difficult. So we start relief in the beginning, and we change relief to development. So we train them, we equip them to start a small project, and we help the mother to deal with the children problems in the community. We help some of them because they haven't schools in Egypt for Sudanese, so we start some schools, simple schools in just in the flat. We have some rooms, and we teach the children because they didn't have schools. So we try to help these refugees to live a good life in this hard situation. And we have a lot of stories how the ladies, and also we have wonderful trauma counseling from 2 years or 3 years ago with Henry and Celia and the team that came from different places. And this trauma counseling bring a hope for many ladies and children, because they was hurted because they lost everything. The husband maybe killed, or they didn't know anything about him. The mother came with the children without any place to stay. So this training bring a hope and peace and healing for many of these women during this time.
Sure did. Johanna, thank you. Martin's, water is a big issue. And I know Martin's not only works in Chade in West Africa, but also in Sudan, South Sudan. We're working on a number of water projects. Can you just give them an idea about the importance of wells or water filters, and what you're doing in that regard, and maybe just highlight one country? I'm thinking of the orphanage that got the well or whatever. Would you just share with them about that?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Looking straight ahead of me is our chairman in the Geneva board, and I want to say thank you for wells, because now we have 4 wells in Sudan and the Nuba Mountain area of Sudan, courtesy of his efforts 2 years ago. The drilling is going on right now, so people can access water. You can imagine you enter into territories where there is no water well. People don't know how to be healthy or how to wash themselves clean, because there's no water to do that. Every available water that they can access, they want to drink first, whether clean or dirty. In some of those places, people don't even know whether the water is clean or is dirty. They just drink. But I'll give you one illustration. We're in Cameroon, thanks to Josh. Josh gave us access to water testing kits. And we took these water testing kits to Cameroon, in the northern part of Cameroon. And it was unbelievable. These people are drinking dirty water. All the tests showed that the water was not clean. So people have this cycle of sickness. I mean, they get healthy now, they go to the hospital, get healthy, and then go back into sickness. Become healthy through going to the hospital, getting medications, and then go back into sickness. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. Until we said something was responsible for the frequency of this cycle of sickness until we tested the water. And all the water had E. coli. I brought some of the tests and I showed to Josh. So it explains why everybody is sick. And we dug this borehole and they can't believe it. It's like the sickness stopped. It was too magical, so to speak, instantly. People now live very, very healthy. So thank you to these good friends who have labored to help us raise those funds. Thank you.
I just want to add about the issue of water. We finished the training in Sudan, and I thought about hand washing and using soap to be very clean. And after the training, I have a question. Yeah, so where do we find the water and the soap? We don't have this.
And then I want you to talk about the monitoring and evaluation, just quickly, the system we put in place.
Okay, Martins, can you tell us about the water source they were using that you tested that wasn't clean?
Well, it's supposed to be a borehole, but it wasn't a borehole, obviously. But it was dug as if it was a borehole, and they had all of those accessories attached to it, but it must definitely be shallow.
Okay. So basically there was surface water that was getting into the borehole they dug. They didn't know until it was cleaned up. On the topic of our monitoring and evaluation program, we set out on a journey a couple years ago to kind of measure what's happening in communities. And we have a lot of data that we're gathering from these villages that shows us the change is happening in these communities, but we had multiple goals. We wanted to report back to our donors that our program was effective. We wanted to be able to communicate with local governments that this program was generating change in communities. But the biggest thing we actually wanted to accomplish was to help our workers on the ground learn about how they could do their jobs better. One of the exciting things that I learned just recently, one of our workers from India is an intern at an agricultural program in Thailand. He was invited over to one of the staff members' houses there, and she's a monitoring and evaluation professional, the lead for that organization. So she asked him some questions, and he told her that the program itself has actually helped him learn about how he works in the community and improve the way that he's able to engage with the people that he's working with. So he's doing a better job, and he's learned how to do his job better because of the monitoring and evaluation program.
Yeah. And Martin, I'm gonna come to you, and Jeff and Beth and Bashak, I'll come to you, and hopefully back to Fidel if we have time. But Martin, you live in Armenia.
Yes.
We were there, and we know about the recent war that just ended with Armenia and Azerbaijan. And so we've talked about trauma suffered by soldiers in particular. Can you speak to that and then briefly describe some of the work you're doing among children? And then we'll come back here to Turkey.
Trauma not only with soldiers, but many people also, because 120 outside people who come, who see their eyes until this war, they come to Armenia, and until now they have trauma. And so many Armenians, outside people also Armenian, but Armenian who live in Armenia, both, yeah. And now we work with many families from outside refugees, and also many families with poor and many care centers, and thank you you supporting our ministry, and we have a 4 daycare center around our village, and we're taking about 100 children from different families. Yes.
Well, thank you. I was there and saw some of the work they're doing for children, and a lot of these children, you know, really need attention, and they need care, and it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. So thank you. I want to shift down to our friends from Turkey. We'll start with Bashak. Tell us about the intersection between the Geneva Institute and some of the political and government leaders that you intersect with, and you know, the impact on them and so forth.
Even though we were running TCP trainings and everything on the field, we decided that it wasn't enough, actually, and we wanted to enlarge the impact on the ground. So that's why we decided to communicate with the local leaders, such as parliament members and mayors. And thanks to GHNI, when they were here, thanks to GILPP, excuse me, when they were here, they were very inspired by all of you, by all the missions we carry. And so when we were back with the first mayor, the mayor of Bornova, we had a great impact on the earthquake area, actually. So with a trauma counseling group, we had a great time with the earthquake victims, and also we had a teachers conference, international teachers conference with that mayor. So after that, the next year, we had the mayor of Konak with us, and when we were back from GILPP, we had a international teachers conference again, the second one, and also we had international business people conference in Izmir. So we conducted all these activities with those mayors who were inspired by GILPP.
Yes.
And they are really eager and ready to attend the next meetings for the further partnerships to enlarge our works on the ground.
That's great. Please give them both my greetings. I remember Madam Mayor from 2 years ago, and of course Mr. Mayor from 3 years ago. Also, just quickly, Bashak, I was there in September with some partners, and we met with local assistant mayor and another gentleman, remember, just outside of Izmir. But the interesting thing was, they were trying to implement policies for business development, income generation for their people in their city, just like we're trying to do.
Yes,
Right.
yes, exactly, because that man was working for the municipality of Bornova, and he was witness what we did with the mayor, who was inspired by GILPP. So that's why when he changed his municipality, he wanted to carry our vision to the next municipality. So he was very inspired and really wanted to, let's say, copy what we did before. So this is a great impact, actually, on business leaders and policymakers.
Thank you. And to Jeff and Beth, and you haven't really lived a suitcase adventure until you've been with Jeff hunting down a lost suitcase in Izmir, Turkey, okay? And when you hear things from him like, you just distract the guy and I'll go in somewhere where I'm not supposed to go, okay, to find the suitcase. And we did it, didn't we, Jeff?
We did.
So, Jeff, talk to us, you and Beth, just about the Geneva Institute, what you see, the intersection, and so forth.
How about that?
Please.
You know, if you ever come to a Global Hope training, we're always teaching on flip charts or butcher paper or whatever. We're drawing in the ground in Africa. And if you're looking for where GILPP and GHNI intersect, you know, it's where these common interests are. And I know that, you know, we're trying to talk about public policy. And, you know, how do I as a bug munching, dirt sleeping humanitarian aid worker, develop and implement public policy. Well, we run this women's project in Turkey, and I got the women together. And I said, why are you involved in this project? And they talked about, I get to use my skills, I get to make money for my family, and I get to help these people continue their cultural traditions that they don't do on themselves, and I'm learning to be a better person. And I took all that, and I got our mission statement. And I said, well, how do you know if this project is successful? How would you know we're doing what we want to do? They talked about, well, not just impact our families, but we'll change our community. And they talked about, we'll get more women involved, and we'll take this to the next community. And from there, we got our vision statement. And then I said, okay, so now I want to remind you, none of these women have an MBA. Many of them have not graduated from elementary school. They were picking vegetables. Many of these women, some of the women are illiterate or semi-literate. So I go, well, let me tell you, if these are how we're supposed to, what we want to accomplish, how should we treat each other? And we talked about our words. And we talked about our attitudes. And we talked about our behaviors. And we came up with about 8 for each of those things. How, using kind words, and to not gossip, and to believe each other, and to be helpful. And we took these, and these are our 8 values from each of these areas. And we took those, and that's our public policy. And we put them on the wall. And those are kind of like the rules that we govern our project on. And in an hour, we went through mission, vision, and values with these ladies. And this policy makes our project run smoother, and we refer back to it all the time. So Beth, why don't you just tell us of how, one of the ladies, like Sahara, how her life was, what was her attitude when she started, and how has her life been transformed?
When we first started, we have a knitting project, and we give them the yarn, and then they would bring it back, and then it would get checked, and then they would get paid for it. Well, she was given a small amount of yarn just to knit up one to make sure she knew how to do it correctly. But somehow she gathered some from other people, and she ended up with 10, and they had a lot of mistakes. And so then we had to say, no, you have to pull that out, you have to fix this. And she was angry. And so she was like, I'm not doing this, I'm quitting. And so she walked out. And then when she made off, she was yelling. And then she came back again because she needed the money. And so she tried again. And so this went on and back and forth. I wasn't there, but I was hearing some of these stories. And then we came back. And we were thinking, well, maybe we should do another project. Maybe we should do baby blankets. And so they were knitting up some blankets. And so we started out with 25 that first year. And at the end, there was only 5 remaining because of the process of having to redo things. They weren't excited about that. But then we grew after that. But then at this point, we only had 5. She was one of the 5. And I was really shocked. And I was looking at her because she was going to get paid. And I saw her, she was crying. And I actually was thinking, I didn't know she knew how to cry. I just knew she yelled a lot and got angry. And then, but Bisham told me, she goes, well, actually, she is quite an emotional person, but she has a sensitive heart, but she is receiving money and she really needs it because her husband is in jail right now. And without that money, she has no way to pay for bills or buy herself food that she needs and help her family. So, over time, I began to see that softer side of Sahara and that tender side.
And when the foreigners came?
Yeah, so this is a couple years later, we had some foreigners come, and we were in a small room because we hadn't grown yet, and we were meeting in a house. And so we're just people sitting on the floor and all around, and so she was invited in the middle, and the foreigners were on the edge, on the back side of the couch. And didn't know a lot that was going on. And so she asked Ashok to translate for her. And she said, I understand what you're feeling, because I was married at 13, and I come from a Kurdish family, and I didn't speak Turkish. And so I came, and I could tell they would be talking about me, and I didn't know what they were saying. And she could relate to them. She had empathy in that she knew what they were experiencing. They knew that sometimes that people were talking about them, or they didn't really know what the conversation, everything was going on. So she saw that softer side that she really didn't care.
Wow, thank you. I want to hear from Fidel about the urban garden, because that directly relates to some teaching that you received here 2 years ago. And then I want to open it up for questions from y'all, because we have about 15 minutes left. So please, Fidel.
Yeah, 2 years back, I came for the first time to be part of this GILPP conference, and one of the presenters was talking about rooftop gardening, which I was so, I loved it so much that I was with him in the group discussion. And right after we went back in our Women's Empowerment Center, there was a rooftop where they throw dirt and it's full of dirt. So we started cleaning that area, and we implemented rooftop gardening, where we planted scarlet and other kind of vegetables, where, in our Women's Empowerment Center, we have lunch, we provide free lunches. So as of today, they can take some of the vegetables from there to prepare food. So GILPP helped me to learn from here and implement what we have learned, different experiences, and we want to expand that idea of using a very small space to produce something edible, something useful. So, yeah.
And Tree actually found that gentleman who came. This guy that he's talking about spoke here, and he has the world's highest rooftop garden. He actually serves 3 different restaurants in Singapore. It's fascinating. And we've been there, we've walked through, Celia and I and others who are here, walked through that Women's Empowerment Center, and Fidel and his team are so creative, okay? They use cartons that computers have been delivered in, okay, to grow vegetables and herbs and things. And they cut drink bottles in half and grow herbs through there. It's just fascinating. But this is part of the interplay between the Geneva Institute and what's happening with those who are less fortunate. And so I hope that helps you get a picture. So let's pause here, and if any of you have questions, we can entertain 3 or 4 questions, and then we'll go to break. So who has a question? Randall.
A question for Dr. Varda concerning Armenia. And my question is, because I'm working with Henry in development and fundraising, I'm thinking a lot about Armenian groups of people that are expats. It so happens that I know a number of Armenians who live in very large Armenian diasporas outside of Yerevan, in Los Angeles, in Fresno, California, also where I grew up. There's a huge Armenian population, as well as Las Vegas, Nevada, where I happen to live now. And my question for you, and it might apply to some other people as well, but when I'm approaching, let's say, some Armenians who don't live in Armenia anymore, and I want to get them interested in supporting projects through Global Hope in their country, and if they don't show any interest in their country, how can I, according to maybe your encouragement or ideas, how can I encourage them to care more about their motherland, about their homeland, so that they would donate to projects so we can help more people in Armenia?
Thank you. It's a very good question. I think many of them who live outside Armenia some of they have some connection with Armenia and our Armenian governments, and so families, they something do in inside Armenia. But I think also many of them, they have theirs, like say works, and they're doing something. Maybe now can something change because world changing and also situation. Maybe you can introduce what now after war happened and how many refugees come to Armenia. This is, I think, maybe can interest them. Also, many of children, they are orphans now, and because many of fathers, they died in war, and also because there are another things, example, many of our families, they haven't worked. Maybe they can some of kind of business start, small business. I don't know.
We'll have to have a signal chat with Varda and the people, and I think that'll really help when they see that, gentlemen. Somebody else, another question.
Can I ask Dr. Martin Zatanda a question? I know that Johanna is going to be graduating some villages, but Martin, you're also, how many of our TCD villages will graduate this year, and how does this relate to self-sustainability?
Thank you. The program in TCD, Transformational Community Development, it's a timed program. In other words, it doesn't just run unending. So we have a minimum of 3 years to maximum of 5 years. And then we ensure that the 5 building blocks of life is executed throughout those periods of time. The 5 building blocks Henry just enumerated, and Lana gave us the acronym for a wife with a W. So the first W is water, the I is income, the F is food, nutrition, agriculture. The E is education, and the last W is wellness, physical and emotional wellness. So the agenda is that if we help a community, by the time we are done, we do a graduation ceremony. Because the program is run by the community members through committees. So we are not directly helping them to run the programs. They are the ones, they select committee members within each locality, and they are, trained, mentored, coached, and so they help to drive the program in their communities. And of course, when expansion happens, they are the best people to take the good news. Good news travels fast. How John says that every time. They are the ones who take the good news to other communities. So far, this year, we just graduated the first village. We have 12 more villages to be graduated this year.
And we just heard today that 3 or 4 more villages are graduating in Egypt. So this is great, and it's good news for people who are investing in these projects as well. We've got time for 1 or 2 more questions. Who has a question? And I want to be sure we've gotten KJ some good photographs of this august group too. Yes, Laurentia.
Thank you so much. I actually have 4 questions, but I think you
Well, that'll take the rest of our time. Okay.
Okay, so the first question has to do with evaluation and indicators. I understand that we have an evaluation framework, but I'd like to understand the indicators, and then like are the indicators specified for each country or region, or is there an overall framework?
All right, that's one.
We can answer that technical question at lunch, or at the coffee break, and we can show you our reporting app, and all of our indicators are tied back to the Sustainable Development Goals developed here in the UN.
Josh, did you have anything to add?
Not really.
Okay.
Okay, then the second question is, so I would assume that you all have like people you work with, right? Like indigenous staff. I would like to understand like how many they are, where they are from, like a bit.
Sade, why don't you talk about that with country by country? You know, y'all have teams on board.
Yeah, we have teams. We work in about 25 African countries. And how do we recruit our teams? We identify champions. We call them champions. We bring them to the TCD training. It differs country by country. In Sierra Leone, we train the people, and we have about 6 champions that are doing work in 4 villages and are replicating the work. In Nigeria, we have, I've lost count of the numbers now. But our main recruitment system is through the TCD training. Once the people, we envision what TCD is, and they go back to their communities, and those leaders don't work in isolation, they train others. Like Martins just said, TCD is community-led, locally owned by the community, but community-led. So we have people that we teach. Jeff trained me as a TCD trainer, and I keep training people. So that's what happens in every country. One leader trains 5 others. So that's where we replicate our workers.
That's great. Question number 3.
Question number 3 is, how do you identify the target group? Is it that data and like the community itself is like, okay, this is our issue and we want to work with it, or do you come with it, or is it given by the donors?
Let's let Trey answer that one. Trey, how do we identify where we work? And you have a lot of experience on that in Thailand.
I do. I feel like less than some of these people here. But yeah, it's decided by the community. And you mentioned target area. You know, so if you're, what you mean by that is which community to work in. Sometimes that's, you know, relationship. Other times it's, you know, we'll meet with district officials and we'll say, you know, where in this, you know, region, you know, would benefit from, you know, some type of locally led kind of consultative process development. We don't go just to any community, and we actually have a kind of a screening process. Spend a few months getting to know the community, learning, you know, about where they come from, what are their strengths, what are they proud of. So it's asset-based community development. So we're not just coming in and saying, you know, this is what's wrong with the community, but it's recognizing that there are strengths here, and there's gifts and talents, and so getting to know the system and the people there, and then kind of choosing between, you know, up to 5 communities at a time. Which community do you think is going to have the greatest likelihood of success, and then helping them get to know themselves, and then they select the goal. So we don't come in with you know an idea of, you know, what project in particular we're going to do, but we, you know, let them, you know, decide. I think they know their community better than we do. So
yeah. All right. Last question.
I would assume that like working locally, right, with the local people, and maybe also like in villages that it's actually connected with a lot of like real life challenges, like on the ground, that we are not really aware of, where, you know, maybe like creative solutions are needed. And I would actually want to hear like maybe an example of how like maybe you had a specific project that you wanted to achieve with maybe some women or so, and then or clean water, and then actually the challenges that you face, like each step, you know, because it sounds very, oh, and then we have clean water, and then this happens, you know. But I can imagine that, you know, like maybe you face like some opposition, or on the road maybe a car broke down, Because if I should imagine myself, being on the ground and working, I can already count all the risks and all the issues that could actually happen. And so how, building resilience.
That's great. We'll have a 2-minute answer from somebody because we need to stop at the bottom of the hour. And Laurentia, I want to say that because you've asked 4 questions, okay, you can come on as an ad hoc member of the Global Hope and GILPP families, okay, so we can talk about that during the break. All right, John?
Yes, I can share about that. We usually train the committee, and after we train the committee know the problem of the community. So they start facing, we help them how to study the problem and how to know the roots of the problem. And when they know that, start thinking for solutions. Like one of the communities, the problem is the high rate of divorce or the high rate of lack of education. So when they start know the problem and study the problem, they find solution, and that helps them to have ownership to lead these problems to find solution. So that's helping us to help the community to find solution. We will not give solution, because as you know, everywhere in the world, if you go as organization, people expect you that you will bring them relief, money, help, but that's not helping them. They're still independent on you. But when we give them ownership from the first day, and they start thinking for their problems and how to use the local resources they have. And we agree that all the countries around all the world, God gave them a lot of local resources, but the people didn't use these resources. So we help them to use these resources to help their communities.
Thank you. Well, I hope this has been encouraging to you. Thank you. We need to give a round of applause to these folks who are out there. Thank you all. Oh, excellent. Thank you. I'm honored to be sitting up here with you all. Thank you. So we'll take a break now. Now let me tell you, because we're going to finish the day, strong. We're going to hear from Dr. Charlie Demento at 4 o'clock, and then after that, I'm going to do an interview train hour with Dr. Freddie Albayati and Dr. Art Lindsley to end the day. So thank you for hanging with us. Let's enjoy some break.